Graduates Conversations podcast.
Okay, so next couple of questions as well are going to be a bit long, so do bear with me. It goes on to, I guess, from where we just left off with the previous comments and questions, getting more educated, keen, highly ethical new interpreters into the industry, and then, eventually the ones maybe that aren't as good, then people can start comparing what a good interpreter is and what a not so good interpreter is, and eventually, we're saying that they might be filtered out. But let's now talk about actually getting people into the industry. We've got a lot of tertiary institutions offering a different variety of courses, which gives them eligibility to sit the NAATI test. And these next few questions go towards the success rate or the failure rate of these interpreters, and getting into the industry. How successful are we as educators, as examiners, as an authority like yourself in actually, and as institutions of education, in actually getting people ready, tested, and into the system. Okay. Now, this goes to the next few questions. The interpreting candidate from New South Wales has been very thorough, and Michael has dropped your name on a couple of occasions, okay, from previous podcasts. So they've listened to it very, very carefully, and they've asked us some questions following that. I watched the 4-part podcast, All Graduates Conversations Interpreting and Translating, Ask NAATI, March 2021. It's very likely this will be glossed over, or I will receive some vague answer that will not actually be answering this. Okay, so we make sure we don't do that, all right? Michael Nemarich said something along the lines of, people who do skill set courses have a higher failure rate. So other than the skill set course being a prerequisite to be completed before the exam, what other purpose does this course have? So NAATI can fail people before the exam? How can someone who can't find any courses in their language that are NAATI endorsed, or any prep courses that can help them to become an interpreter, a translator, or both, according to Mr Nemarich, they are already at disadvantage and are likely to fail. So what do we think about that, Michael? The skill set course, we're saying that it is a prerequisite to be completed before the test. And then we're also saying that when you're comparing a skill set course to, let's say, advanced diploma, or in some cases at master's level, we're saying that people who complete these other higher level training opportunities actually have a better chance of passing the test, as opposed to someone who's completed the skill set course, which we know is a 10-week short course, which I think is mostly aimed at getting people recognized for those languages that aren't being tested. So what's your answer to this? What should they do? What should this person do?
So I think it's probably going to be a bit of a long answer. So the report that I mentioned earlier, the Improvement to NAATI Testing report, which was in 2012, that led to the certification system, one of the key findings of that report was training is a key component of being able to meet the requirements of Australian society's use of interpreters and translators, and by extension, the test that we have that certifies someone as meeting those standards. So the prerequisite requirement, which didn't exist in the past, of training was implemented for the certification system. The skill set course that's being referred to was co-developed with TAFE South Australia and RMIT, And it was because only 16 languages that we currently test in are available in higher education institutions at a level of diploma or above. So the skill set is a 4 to 5 unit skill units of competency of the diploma of interpreting. And it was a recognition of the fact that for some languages, like NAATI will test, we test in about 40 languages now. We're up to 55 languages by the end of 2023. And it's a recognition of the fact that for some of those languages, there is not enough training or any training available if something like the skill set didn't exist. So we appreciate that it's not a perfect solution, but it's more training than was available previously. We are working hard, I guess, with education institutions in the next couple of months, where now that we've been going for just over 3 years, we have a reasonable data set that we're going to start sharing with the endorsed qualification providers of, and it's anonymised. It's not like we provide individual candidates' results, but allowing us to work in close collaboration with education institutions that provide endorsed qualifications and saying, this is where we're seeing students that have taken your course at certain levels, where the failure points are, and then really trying to work through that with institutions of going, is it something in the delivery of the teaching? Is there something another institution offering a similar qualification is doing that they're not? Or is it something in the testing process that's tripping people up that we need to address? That's early days now, but again, we've done 3,000, I'll stick with interpreting, we've done roughly 3,000 interpreting tests over the 40 languages that we've done up until this point. This is a reasonable data set now that we can start really pulling apart and going, where is it? It's in NAATI's interest to have more people certified if they meet the requirements of society. We definitely don't want to be.
That's what we're all trying to do. That's what we're all trying
absolutely.
to do.
And there is an obvious ability for people to look at what I'm saying as a bias, or looking at it with rose-tinted glasses. The NAATI is, we don't want to just be testing people for the sake of testing them. We're committed to the industry. We're committed to the professionalisation of the industry. You look at some of those comments before about the disastrous service that was provided in a hospital setting, where the outcome is literally life and death in some of those situations. That's in no one's best interest. So we set the standard quite high because we don't want those situations to happen. But we certainly acknowledge that to get to that standard is challenging for people. And if I can draw an analogy, as an industry, it's reasonably unique because people come with a pre-existing skill set, which is incredible competency in a language other than English in many cases. But the profession of interpreting and translating is in addition to those existing skill sets. So the analogy I've been using lately, it's like a high school teacher. You could be the world's greatest epidemiologist or greatest chemist, but how do you apply those skills to students in a high school or as a university lecturer? And that requires additional training. So we're certainly not saying that people that haven't passed the test don't have great language competence. It's how you get that language competence and apply it in an interpreting or translating workplace. And this training is that we're endorsing qualifications for is to bridge that gap between competence in language and delivery on the ground as a practitioner. We hope and are confident that using this data set that we've now got and working in conjunction with higher education institutions, that we can start looking for either where the training has been deficient or where our test has been the reason for someone not getting through, and we can really start improving those numbers. And then the final part of the equation is the very fact that it is a prerequisite for the test, and NAATI being the standard for the country, just like the professional development being a prerequisite for recertification, we're seeing the private sector, institutions and others fill that increased demand for professional training, either for recertification purposes or for language training to be able to take the test in the first instance, interpreter and translator training. So we've definitely seen that there is a couple of institutions that are working on a diploma for some of the smaller languages, and we hope that there's announcements on those soon, which is a better and more comprehensive is the better term to use there, more comprehensive than the skill set. So we're hoping that, and we're seeing signs of, that those prerequisites and the increased demand is leading to service providers to fill that demand and creating courses and content that will allow people to get higher levels of training.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to continue on with the other half of the question. I think it's important to point out that this interpreter candidate sat the test in the Greek language. Okay, so an established language, not necessarily in a language that's new and emerging and there isn't training available. But here's the dilemma this person is facing. I've done my skill set course and sat for my NAATI test and failed. I've applied for the next available test next year. I've put my name down on a waiting list or expression of interest for a diploma of interpreting in Greek with both RMIT and TAFE New South Wales. So the candidate is aware that the skill set course is a minimum and is trying to actually get further training. Okay. I will need to wait to see if the demand is there. Seems like I must fork out more money to increase my chances. Also, it's not like the exam is cheap either. When I jumped on the NAATI website for endorsed qualifications, I get a list of RMIT courses, but when someone does not have a diploma or a degree, the slim choices become even slimmer. RMIT has graduate, advanced graduate, master's courses. I only have an undergraduate certificate from a university. NAATI does not help to give out learning materials. I asked and got nothing. When asked on Ask NAATI back in March 2021 how to study, the answer was very vague. Apart from using the material that I got in my skill set course and my glossaries, I really don't know where else to turn to increase my chances of passing the test. I even asked RMIT for study materials and their answer was apply for a course, which is $24,000. I even found a prep course for Greek on the website. It was via TAFE SA. I inquired with TAFE SA and was told that the course no longer exists. I even sent them a snapshot of the NAATI website, and the NAATI website isn't updated. So the candidate's trying to do as best as they can to get further training. Then it's about, I guess we can't speak on behalf of the tertiary institutions here. They need to have a certain number of students to be able to open classes. If the classes aren't opened, the candidates are more than likely to go and then do a skill set, which doesn't really train people to be interpreters from scratch. In all honesty, it's more like a complementary course for people who have been already working as interpreters, as maybe unaccredited interpreters in the new and emerging languages that are high in demand. And your way is to give them at least some kind of training then give them this recognized practicing interpreter accreditation. The candidate here seems to be trying really hard to get the training, but she can't attain that training. She wants material, can't get the material unless they go and do a course. It is a dilemma, I understand. And I guess back in the day, NAATI for I guess translation tests had some practicing material, as you remember, that people could maybe go and purchase in certain languages. There doesn't seem to be any other way for them to get the training required unless they go and do a course, but then the course isn't available. I know for a fact that I had to wait for 3-4 years until Turkish was made available. And then on some years I forgot and it was available and no one asked, no one told me. It's something that needs to be, I guess, considered here. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a few points in it, again, longish answers, but the first point to note is NAATI has no affiliation with the education institutions delivering training. So I think that's worth pointing out. We don't get commission for endorsing qualifications. So forcing people, requiring people to do training prior to us is solely for the purpose of getting people better prepared. The second part of that, we acknowledge, I guess, that sometimes that training isn't available, which I commented in the last answer as well. And we're really keen to look at where we can fill some of the gaps where appropriate. We believe that education institutions like RMIT that's referenced there, or TAFE New South Wales, are better at delivering training than NAATI would be as well. We're a standards and testing body rather than a training institution. So for NAATI's perspective, we're not going to move into the higher education space and try and crowd out established and very good institutions that are globally ranked very highly. So, but we certainly do acknowledge that lack of opportunities exist and that preparatory material could be better. We've done a bit over the last 4 or 5 months since that last podcast of improving information on the website, getting some more videos up of how the interaction works. I mentioned in the last answer, we're now about to work with education institutions and find where the gaps exist. And we've just turned on a new language learning management system in the last few weeks, which we're hoping to make that information easier to find. So hopefully some pretty exciting announcements coming out over the next couple of months with that. And that learning management system, the intent is for candidates or prospective candidates to be able to find information that we've currently got on YouTube or on our website or in various other locations in one central place and add to it. So we've definitely got practice materials getting developed, and they'll be on there in a couple of months. It's always a challenge, I guess, that the tests very much rely on live interpreting tasks. You can clearly not be able to do a live interpreting task with information available on a learning management system. However, we believe that we'll be able to get across information like complexity, length, and domains of the tasks that are being tested to give candidates a better opportunity. So I think that's an answer to all of the questions. Pull me up if I haven't done that, but certainly in a nutshell, acknowledge that there is difficulties. We working with learning higher education institutions to try and improve those opportunities and improve the training, and then provide more ourselves. And very specifically, just signed off on a learning management system a couple of weeks ago to start that process.
Looking forward to seeing it in action. Good luck with that. Because, the NAATI website is a massive website with a lot of information. And in all honesty, it's not very easy to navigate through if you're trying to get a certain bit of information. And I've been on it a million times and I was like, where was this? Where was this? Where was this? And every time I say, I've got to save this, I need to download this, but I don't. So, looking forward to it actually being available on an LMS and more, to the point. So, good luck and looking forward to that. Look, I want to shout out to this interpreting candidate, and I want to try to ask her questions and read out her comments as much as I can. There is a lot to read out, so I've kind of joined some of the questions together. So respectfully to the candidates, please do excuse me if I don't read it out word for word, but I'm going to add on to your question from the previous question, because the first half of this is quite similar to the other one. So I'm going to continue from there. The only learning materials I have is the 2 works from RMIT and TAFE SA, which I had accessed during my RMIT skill set course. In addition, I have been participating in as many PDs, podcasts, and short courses as possible with all graduates, NAATI and AUSIT, etc. Please explain how someone is meant to pass the test with only a skill set qualification, which is the minimum requirement. You guys go on and on about practice, 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 but how and with what? I can't find learning materials online with AUSIT, NAATI, RMIT, etc. courses to further my skills. Is NAATI deliberately failing people who only do the skill set and diploma courses? I can't be the only person who is in this situation. Is NAATI failing the people who have only done the skill set course as a way for NAATI and educational institutions to make easy money? The only reason I bring up money is several times during the 4-part, 2-hour podcast with Mr Nemarich, he mentions money and specifically goes into detail how NAATI loses money when hosting CPI exams. These comments made by Mr Nemarich do not inspire any confidence at all. I hope I will get a proper answer. I wanted to read this out, and I wanted this interpreted candidate to be heard. So I didn't want to just gloss over it or edit it heavily. As much as I could read it pretty much with all this content. And I can say that as an educator who has students who have sat the test and speaking to many candidates, this is a common conception that NAATI is in it for the money, the test costs a lot of money, are you failing people in order to make more money? Are you in collusion with tertiary institutions to push them towards more expensive courses? I wanted the voice to be heard, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to answer these comments, maybe I should say. I don't want to call them accusations or allegations as such. It's someone who sat the test, who's seen the system and who was unsuccessful, and they've tried to access other courses in addition to the skill set. But I can say that, this is a common conception. I mean, is NAATI making a lot of money from these? I know that we said that you're running at a loss last time, but people want to know, are you in collusion with tertiary institutions to push people towards higher cost courses? Are you failing people on purpose who are doing the skill set course? Michael, Aurelie?
I guess I just wanted to comment on NAATI failing candidates on purpose. I would like to reassure candidates that we're certainly not doing this, and we also have really strict procedures in place as to who marks the test and how results are considered.
Can I ask you, sorry, Aurelie, I mean, does NAATI know what level of education this person has completed? I mean, when a candidate comes and applies for the test, or when the examiner is marking, do they know if they've completed a skill set course or if they've completed a master's? Do they have this information?
NAATI would know at the time of application, but our examiners wouldn't know. Examiners only look at the performance. So that's why I wanted to make that comment, because this is certainly not something that's taken into account at the time of marking. We always have 2 examiners minimum marking a performance. That's our minimum. So it's never just one person looking at the performance. So there are parameters in place to ensure that the results that are issued are as reliable as possible. If our 2 examiners are in disagreement, we call on to the 3rd marker. And as you know, candidates also have the possibility to ask for a review of the test, for a paid review of the test as well, which would involve another examiner or a panel of examiners sometimes. So we certainly take every reasonable steps to make sure the results issued are as reliable as possible. I hope that answers that part of the question.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that the examiners or whoever's marking have no idea what level of education the candidate has completed. I'm only pointing that out because it says here, is NAATI deliberately failing people who only do skill set and diploma courses? The examiners have no idea what kind of education that the candidate has completed.
That's right. Yeah, they wouldn't have any information about the candidate. The only thing they have is the performance.
Yep. Thank you very much. Well, Michael, are you in this for the easy money, or are you in it with the tertiary educations for easy money? Especially commenting on the detail you go into how NAATI loses money when hosting CPI exams.
Yeah, so I guess for anyone that's listening to this podcast, I could reiterate that point, which there are 7 people involved in the conducting of a test, and we'll run a test if there's only one person, regardless of the language, if we've committed to running it. So, but I guess people would expect me to say, it loses money. So the bigger part for me, I guess, if I can use a different way of explaining it, is still better for NAATI to have more people certified. It's far preferable for us to have a long-term relationship with practitioners and for the industry to see it as beneficial. We definitely don't have we don't get kickbacks or commission from courses run, but I would comment just on that, on the higher value course, we do see more education as being a better result. And I'll bring it right back to the starting questions or comments about that experience in a hospital setting, and where people are able to demonstrate the skills required of a professional in an environment like that. If they've managed to do that with a 10-week or 11-week skill set course, then that's fantastic. But again, we don't get any commission from a higher education institution offering a higher level course. But we would certainly say that a higher level course gives you better preparation, and I wouldn't walk back from those comments. And so it would be our preference, where it's available, that candidates do that as preparation, and then for both our tests, but more importantly, longer term in the industry, that they have the skills required to meet needs of the society.
There's nothing, I guess, stopping people from doing the skill set course in whatever language. There's no necessary guidelines as to it's only for these languages or it's not for these languages. But it's recommended that where higher education is available, that's the one they do, as opposed to the skill set. But again, we can't answer for the tertiary institutions and how they run their programs. But this candidate has basically said that was the only thing available for me at the time. I've made an expression of interest. I've made an application, and have been advised that classes won't be opening unless the numbers are there. So as much as you will run a test, even with one candidate, I guess the tertiary institutions might not run an entire course with one student. But then if you've got quite a lot of people already in a particular language trying to do the skill set course, then they might not have enough numbers for the higher level education. I don't know. It's a bit of a difficult one, and maybe we talk about hopefully maybe one day we have someone representing a tertiary institution with us, so we can possibly ask them these questions. And it looks like the interpreter candidate here is doing the right thing, is trying to get as much education as possible, but has been unsuccessful in getting into one of these courses because the numbers aren't there. And they want to have access to more training material, but they can't have access to more training material unless they go and do a course. But they can't do a course because the numbers aren't there. It's a big dilemma, and I definitely understand the frustrations, and I'm frustrated for the interpreter candidate as well, to be honest with you. So hopefully, like we said, everything's quite new, 3 years only, and hopefully people don't lose faith in the system. I believe it's a great system, but is there room for improvement? Of course, isn't there for all of us? Isn't there for everything? And now that you have enough data, 3 years of it, and you're working on the first continuous improvement program with all this data, and hopefully we can only hope and work towards a better industry altogether, with NAATI, with AUSIT, with the interpreting institutions, the training institutions, with LSPs, with the candidates, So please, let's not lose hope. I guess it's far from being perfect, but we're all working towards something that's always better. I hope for this candidate's sake that they can get into a course to attain more training, and your LMS is up and going soon, and there's more material there, there's more guidance there. At least if there are some samples there, people can see what to expect, and then people might even, build their own materials, or there's a lot of material out there. They can then kind of see what kind of material that they can use, even in everyday life, when you're listening to TV, driving in the car, listening to talkback radio, interpreting as we go. I'm not trying to patronize or simplify the issue here, but once they maybe get an understanding of how they can practice with what kind of material, maybe they can work on building their own material until they get into a course, So I hope I was able to address all the comments and questions from this particular interpreter candidate, and I definitely didn't want to gloss over it. I did probably compress a couple of the questions together, as there might have been a little bit of repetition, so apologise if I didn't ask all the questions and read out all the comments, but I hope that we were able to address your concerns for this particular interpreter candidate. Please don't give up and keep going, and good luck with the next test that hopefully you're able to sit.
If I could just, Fadi, elaborate, and I appreciate it was a long answered question anyway, but just a little bit more on why it's important for us that we can get people to pass longer term. So again, exclude the cost part of it, which I can appreciate people don't need to see that or think that it's relevant to them. For the very viability of NAATI, it's important that people pass. And I think this is probably the key part that people could take comfort in. If no one ever passed our test, there would be no NAATI certified interpreters to work in industry, and the NAATI certification system and standard and requirement to use NAATI certified people would disappear because the supply of people wouldn't be there. NAATI as a standards and certification body would lose relevance and disappear. So if all the cost part gets excluded, just that very fact of our corporate existence is reliant on a supply of interpreters and translators to the broader Australian society and industry. Otherwise, we become irrelevant and disappear.
It's your job to certify interpreters.
That's right.
That's why you're there.
So
and that's why we are there as educators, to train them, to prepare them for the test. I mean, if no one passes, you don't need to be there. The educators don't need to be there.
Exactly.
And I understand candidates' frustrations, definitely. But like you're saying, we'd all be out of a job if everyone just kept failing all the time.
Yeah. We certainly appreciate there is gaps that need to be addressed, and we will continue, as you said. No, we're not perfect, and we can all improve, and certainly looking at lots of the things we can do to assist that process.
Sure. Look, I've got one last question, and I think it's a pretty good question actually, and it's quite a valid one. I noticed on the CPI test for Greek, it is set for the 14th of April 2023. Sunday, 16th of April, Orthodox Easter 2023 is the date. That is the date of Orthodox Good Friday. All right, so the test is set for 14th of April 2023, which is Orthodox Good Friday. Very disrespectful from NAATI. You think of a multicultural place like NAATI would have been aware of this. Was this an oversight? What do you think happened here? Or is this something that you generally consider, specific cultures and their test dates? Is this something you have considered in the past? Would you now consider this in the future? What do you think?
The short answer is yeah, oversight.
Same thing.
So I guess the easiest way to explain it is we're trying to fit, which I referenced before, we're trying to fit 55 languages over multiple skills, translation, CPI, CI specialist, into a test calendar. Those 55 languages, almost by definition, come with 55 plus cultures, particularly when you're looking at languages like Spanish and Arabic, which is spoken in multiple regions and multiple countries. But we can't have 100 people in the room when we're trying to determine the test calendar, because it becomes unfeasible. So very, very specifically for the Greek Orthodox, absolute oversight by us, and we'll fix that. I don't know what we're fixing it to yet, but we'll be able to fix that. And I know that just recently we moved a Turkish test for a similar reason. And if I look back 2 years ago, we found that some of the European languages were really difficult to get marks back from, because lots of Europeans take long summer holidays in the middle of the year.
You don't have to worry about that these days, Michael. That's definitely not happening.
So look, complete oversight where we get told, obviously it's not intentional, and purely from getting candidates to a test session, it's a terrible business decision. So yeah, where we can get informed of that, we'll absolutely fix it. And the practicality of it is just very much, yes, we're multicultural. We would like to think we do an okay job of it. We did a staff survey the other day. 75% of our staff speak a language other than English, and we're highly multicultural in that respect, but just sometimes we don't pick up all of them. So yeah, clear mistake on our behalf, that one.
All right. Well, thank you very much for addressing that. And I guess this is why we're here, and this is why we spoke about the importance of the Ask NAATI podcast, and we said that people can just ask anything they want, and here we are, that maybe this one would not have been picked up had it not been for this interpreter candidate asking this question. So thank you very much for the candidates and all our interpreters and practitioners, or prospective interpreters, practitioners that have asked their questions. Please keep them coming. The form is always open. Now, the form is, there's a link on the NAATI website for the form, I believe. And there is also a link on the All Graduates website, as well as the Conversations website, which is the All Graduates PD and Training Division website. So, whenever you have a question in mind, just click onto the form and put it in there, and I will do my best to ask all the questions. And Michael and Aurelie are always very keen to answer them all. We said, like, it'll take as long as it takes, and then like I did last time, we'll put it into smaller chunks for people to be able to, I guess, consume it easier, so please keep those questions coming. Thank you again to all of those people who've asked the questions, and I hope that I was able to ask them and read out your comments as you have wanted them to be asked and read out. If not, I do apologize. I try to kind of put it all in context and try to ask a direct question. It might not be so easy sometimes with very long comments and questions. So I do apologize if that wasn't done, but hopefully I have. And I also want to say a big thank you to Aurelie Sheehan, to Michael Nemarich for taking the time. And, I put you on the spot every 3 months. We've got some easy questions and then maybe some not so easy questions. So thank you very much for taking the time to answer them today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you. Good luck with everything. Good luck with the new LMS. Good luck with the new tests. 55 languages by the end of 2023. That's going to be pretty big. But then you've probably got another 145 to go, I guess. So good luck. Good luck with the rest of it. And thanks again. I'll speak to you maybe in another 10 to 12 weeks' time, and we'll see where we are at.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thank you to everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can get notifications when episodes are up. We have webinars, live streams. As you also know, we just released our Conversations lecture series, and we had AUSIT National President, Dr. Erica Gonzalez, last month, and this month, on the 29th of July, we will have Dr. Curtis Roman and also Lavinia Heffernan from NAATI and Dr. Curtis Roman from Aboriginal Interpreter Services Northern Territory, and they'll be talking about the Indigenous Interpreter Project, which Michael and I, we spoke about this about 6 months ago, and you pointed me in the right direction. We got onto Hannah, and then Hannah got us onto Dr. Curtis and Lavinia. So we're looking forward to their presentation on the 29th of July. By the time you watch this, it'll be actually the day after the live stream. But if you didn't manage to catch the live stream, you can always watch it on the YouTube channel on demand. Thank you again to everyone, and good luck with everything out there. Stay safe wherever you are, and hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.
All Graduates Conversations Podcast.